Internet. What's up, Internet? What are you doing? What's going on? Hey, we have a pretty mellow intro today because it is Monday, the 13th of February 2017. And I wanted to go and talk about a few things today that come up fairly often. This comes up very often as far as people asking me questions about what they should do with their tank, what's going on, like, what's happening in my neck of the woods, like what's interesting me a lot. And I would say right now my most, I think most of my energy, I guess maybe that's kind of what I'm going for there. A lot of my energy is spent just messing around staring at crypts. Cryptocoyne. I obviously say it wrong because I don't necessarily run in crowds that, talk to me, because I'm pretty isolated and most people don't talk to me about plants, so I have to research them because there just isn't that many people around to talk to about a plant that you find to be really interesting. So that's just the nature of the thing, and that's why I'm on the internet, because I have to find you 5,000 boys and girls out there who actually are interested in plants and stuff, which is a surprisingly small amount of the population, if that's the case. That I don't believe is the case. We just got to try and get out there to a bigger group of people, which I guess on that little thread, I'm going to throw in a note here that says we are working on a new studio. We're working on new stuff. If you didn't watch the newest video after the winter break, which was just a couple of days ago, we are in the process of buying a home, and the studio will be there, and the projects will be out of control, and we will be, like I said, we'll be building and setting up a studio, which means I'll be able to do a lot of production. And one of the big things that I'd like to talk about, and I want to get it into your guys' brain, that I'm going to be doing a podcast fairly often with video and audio. I'm going to be doing it mainly on YouTube, so y'all can access it and that kind of stuff. We will later on be uploading specific things to Patreon. Will be the small paywall, which we'll be putting it up for $1, and we see we can't be doing more stuff and getting out into the world to be getting back to you guys and finding some goofy stuff. But right now, like I said, I've been focusing a lot of my energy on these crypts and just kind of working with them. And to be honest, when I get this question of like what kind of plants should I put in my aquarium, this is the one that I will almost always recommend to people, is to get some crypts. There are many different kinds. They can pretty much handle, depending on the variety that you're looking at, they can pretty much handle any kind of water situation out there. They all kind of like a little bit different. They don't necessarily need a ton of light. They will grow in a ton of light. They don't need it, though. They're, in the wild, they're generally underneath other plants, so they're kind of typically growing in shady areas, so they don't need a ton of light. As you guys know, these crypts right here in this video are in the 180 that do have the LED GU10 bulbs over it. And I can't remember off the top of my head exactly how many bulbs are in there. I think I have 22 of them or 18 of them. I'm not sure. It's a very small amount. Let's see. Hold on. So there's 9 and 6. So there's 24. I think there's 24 of them, I think. But either way, that's a very small amount of wattage of light being put in because of the LED directional bulbs. And if anybody's really confused about what light bulbs I am talking about right now, links to them are down below in the description of the video on the Amazon site store. Click through that stuff. I have posted up a bunch of the products that I use, and you guys can scroll through that kind of stuff. If you're wondering what kind of substrate I have in there, I have 3 different kinds of substrate, but primarily the Fluval stratum, which is my favorite substrate of all time. The Fluval plant stratum substrate is my favorite, most versatile to use. I do have the Seachem's black sand in the front of the tank and a little bit of ADA's Amazonia in here also. But the main substrate in here is that fluval stratum. And like I said, there are links down below in the description if that's confusing you. But like I was saying before, these are just a really hardy plant that are really sort of a long-term commitment. Once they get going, they will go, they will propagate, they will fill out a tank, and without that much fuss, like, and explaining that would be, you're not going to have to do a ton of maintenance. You're not going to have to constantly trim them. You're not going to constantly have to worry about all sorts of things. Look at me messing with the new camera there. That was a smooth focus in and out there, guy. But you're not going to have to spend a ton of time really messing with this plant. This is kind of a plant, forget it. Pull the runners or just let the runners go. As we go through the video here, if you kind of keep an eye out, you can see a lot of the little runners are basically how this propagates. It will send a root out underneath the substrate, and then all of a sudden a new plant will show up, start popping up out of the substrate, probably 2 to 4, sometimes way far away, which I've found that to be odd that they only do that very rarely, but that's how this plant propagates. You won't really know that it's sending out more plants necessarily until all of a sudden one will just start popping up out of the substrate. But long term, I even have a friend that doesn't matter who it is, but I have a friend that let the crypts just grow in their tank and fill out the whole entire tank, and that tank looked great. They will go around rocks and grow around things that are, if you have driftwood and that kind of stuff, they'll grow around it and just kind of accommodate whatever area. But, like I was saying, this is the plant that I definitely recommend because as a long-term plant, it will just keep growing in your tank and doing well. And if your tanks, like 99% of the people out there, I know that I'm a little bit weird that I have a fish shop in my garage and my workshop and all that kind of stuff. Most people have a fish tank as kind of a centerpiece in their house. I know that like I said, I know that it's odd that I have a place where I keep my tanks and work on them. Most people will have something, in their living room or something along those lines. And I do feel that this is the kind of best plant for the long-term tank application. Like if you were to set up a tank, in your living room and let it grow for a long period of time, you're going to end up with a lot of these crypts really showing up exactly where you wanted them. Or not necessarily, well, what was I saying there? That sentence got weird. They're going to grow and fill in over a long period of time. If you're somebody who's not going to be really messing with the tank and just kind of have it as a centerpiece. And then, 6 to 8, 10, 12 months down the road, you'll realize that it's really grown in and it's really doing a garden effect that you're looking for without a ton of hanging over the tank and trimming things and really worrying about whether you're dosing fertilizer and all that kind of stuff. And, like I said, once it's fully kind of grown in and covering these really cool areas, here's some of the runners that I was talking about earlier, these little guys that just pop up down the way. But as I was saying, it'll really grow in and fill in the tank without a ton of just screwballing around. And, aesthetically speaking, I don't really think that there's a plant out there that is kind of like the long leafy type plant that really competes with how these do this little bush effect. Without a whole ton of just crazy trimming or whatever you got to do out there. They make these little bushes, and then as they fill in an area, it will definitely, encompass a good amount of space in your tank. I mean, you have to bear in mind that my tanks are pretty big. I know that they're not 20-gallon show tanks and stuff like that people do in the competitions. This is a 180-gallon tank, and you can see how much they're propagating and kind of just taking over the areas where I put them where I wanted them to be. See, there's 2 little sprouts right there. There's another one behind that one, and they're just kind of sprouting out and taking over. The one issue that I do have is this little bit of root. This little aerial root will pop up here and there. That is something that you will have to kind of pay attention if you're really nitpicky. I'm not, but sometimes I do when I'm doing like high-res photos and stuff like that. Obviously here in the video you can see like old snail shells and a couple of roots popped up here and there, but I'm really zoomed in, and for me it's pretty rare that I even do that anymore because honestly doing those hugely high-res video photos anymore. I don't know, they just feel like kind of a waste of time to me. I just don't spend that much time doing it anymore. So I just let these plants do what they got to do. You can see transitionally through the coloring here how growing under different lighting environments will give you a different, essentially a different plant. Not necessarily a different plant, but it will really have the appearance. It will really change the appearance based on which light you're getting to it. This real dark kind of reddish color in this very this type of crypt. Like I said, there are hundreds of different kinds, so you can go out there and find the kind that are going to work good in your water without having to do a ton of work. But also, having provided them with different light, they will grow in a different way. And under the highlight situation that I have with these LEDs here, they put out these kind of dark, kind of crinkly leaves. And in the lesser light situations, they put out these kind of smoother, brighter green leaves. So that's really just like opinion, just what you like better aesthetically. You can mess around with that kind of stuff, and you can really do that kind of stuff externally and not necessarily have to be constantly digging around in your tank, getting your really fancy shirts all wet like I do constantly, and ruining them, and having to ask for new shirts for Valentine's Day, which is tomorrow. So those of you out there that may be thinking about something for Valentine's Day, order some stuff through darkstararts.com is my website. So if you go there and click through the Amazon banner, it'll give us a little bit of props for you ordering chocolates for your lady for Valentine's Day or whatever the hell you want to order. Plumbing accessories or whatnot. If you do that, you'll just give us a little bit of props and help me buy some paint and some drywall for the new studio coming up, which would be cool. I'm gonna do the labor. You guys can help out with some of the material costs, and I'll order it through Amazon and ship it to the house. Would be cool. But that's what's happening here. But like I was saying with the crypts, man, they really are the most kind of the most rewarding plant that I deal with now. And as I said in the last video that came up, I'm going to be messing around with some trimming and whatnot because we have about 30 days before we move these tanks. So I do need to get them trimmed and replanted and things before I start the tear down and the reassembling of them. Obviously, when I tear them down and move them, I'm going to be rescaping everything. So I'm also working out setting aside a lot of plants and getting them isolated and basically keeping them in my sump so that they are able to, create a good, basically what happens is when you float a plant in water for a long amount of time, it will start creating roots to start reaching down and try and get to some substrate, try to get to some minerals that it needs, which is what I'm doing with a lot of the plants that are going to be transferred and replanted. Instead of replanting them directly into the tank, I'm going to float them in the sump so that they drop out some aerial roots, and then when it comes time to replant them in about a month, they're going to be ready to go. And I'm just going to be able to plant them right in the substrate, right wherever I want them, without having to rip them back out of the substrate. It's just kind of, I guess, call that a pro tip. Is that the pro tip? That may or may not be a pro tip. I don't know. Most people that are at least elbow deep in the hobby probably already knew that, but I'll throw it in there just in case somebody doesn't. And but that's what's happening in my neck of the woods out here. But like I was saying, I'm obsessed with these. I'm obsessed with these plants. Like I'm from California or something. I'm not. And those of you out in Tacoma that have been reaching out, Tacoma, Washington, like I said, it's going to be about a month before I'm down there, but starting in about April, I'm going to be trying to do more outreach to people in Tacoma that are doing fish tankery type stuff. And the Puget Sound Aquarium Society, I will probably be attending some of the meetings out there so I can meet y'all face to face and start getting involved in some of the things that are going on down there. But that's what's happening today on Monday. Gearing up for Valentine's Day. Gonna take a big nap. Just lay down and take a nap so that I'm fully energized for what will probably be a long work day in the rain for Valentine's Day. All right, kids. Stay good. Was that a 15-minute video? Oh, all right. It's pretty long. All right. Later.